Hello everyone, and thank you once again for joining me here at the Joy of Carving. In this video, together we're going to be carving this cute little cat and mouse scene. And this makes a great project for those beginner whittlers who are looking for something a little bit more challenging. There's one or two awkward angles that we're going to be utilizing when we're carving, but we'll tackle those together. Without further ado, get yourself a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and let's begin the joy of carving. As always, there will be very few components involved in making this, so we have the blank cutout of the cat and the mouse, our whittling knife, and then of course if you wanted to, you can mount yours on a piece of driftwood like I have. And I'm making use of my thumb sheath there. I would recommend you using gloves or thumb sheaths for this project, particularly when we're carving that mouse, because it's so small and the blade is going to be very, very close to your thumb. But we're starting with the back of the cat, and we're just rounding those sharp angles. We're just rounding the back legs and the behind of the cat there. And as always, just be mindful about where the direction of that wood grain is flowing. So on my cat, it's flowing horizontally. So we've started with the back of the cat there, because that's going to be the chunkiest part of the work. We don't want to start with something really, really delicate. As I've mentioned in previous videos, if you start with something really small, say the ears or the paws, and you carve those really thin, then there's a strong chance that you're going to break them, snap those off as you're gripping the piece when you're carving. As we're whittling away the head there, we just need to be mindful not to take too much away from those ears. We need to leave those prominent. If we carve too much off them, then essentially what we're going to do is we're just going to carve a horn that's just going to be a triangle. We need to make sure there's plenty of room, there's plenty of wood for us to carve the ears later on, because they will be much more prominent. So just focus on the face. Don't worry about the ears for now. And you'll see there that I'm using the ears as a leverage to carve down the face, so it's really important that we didn't carve those ears first, because they'd be too thin. As we were pressing the knife against them, they would have just simply snapped off. So we're just carving the nose and the face there. What I would recommend is you will need to keep switching the angle in which you're carving at, because we're constantly moving against and with that grain direction there, that grain flow. So just be mindful about how that wood feels as you're carving it. Do you need to change the direction in which you're carving? So now we need to just quickly mark out where the paws are going to go, both for the sides and for the front, of course, because we're going to have the gap between those paws. Using the tip of the knife, we're going to carefully score along those lines that we've just drawn out, and we're creating a stop cut here, so we're creating a channel that we can carve into. And I just need to stress here as well, this doesn't take much force, this is very, very light touch here. And now we have that little channel that we've made, which we can carve into, because we want those paws to be wider than the head. But I will say this is quite a difficult, awkward angle to carve. So just take away tiny pieces at a time, so that we're not risking breaking off a chunk of wood, and just be patient with this part. And you can see there that this part is particularly awkward, because we can't get the very tip of the knife in there without risking breaking that tip off. So I'm just carving a channel, I'm switching sides and I'm carving a V shape. So just carve one side and then switch over to the other. And then of course we can proceed with thinning down the top of the paws and the side as well. We're going to proceed with the back paws in exactly the same way as we carved the front one. So we're scoring the lines in to create our channel, our stop cut, and we're carving into that. Once you're happy with the depth that you have on both the front paw and the back paw, you can really start to shape each one of those. So I'm really taking that front paw further in towards the head there. Just remember as well, once you finish carving those depths, just take away the sharp angles. So I'm just carving the very end there to make the transition much softer. And then you can repeat that process, the exact same process on the other side. So just mark out the positions where you're going to carve and just repeat those steps again. So we're not quite there yet, there's still more detail to do, but you can see what the final shape of that cat is going to look like. So this is an awkward angle for us to carve because we're carving down the hill, down the back of the cat, but we get to a point where it starts going up again, so you have feathering there. And the trick really is to just carve one side, stop, and then carve the other. If you don't stop at the point where it starts to tear the wood, you're going to just unfortunately rip a whole chunk of the work out, and we definitely want to avoid that. So be really mindful at this point, really try and feel when the angle of that wood is changing, that flow is changing. Really try and feel when the wood wants to tear instead of carve. And that will tell you when you need to stop and change direction. Now we can move on to the ears. So I'm just drawing them out there, what I want them to look like. And the secret here is to avoid the temptation to carve too much at once. So it can be really tempting at first to just push the knife really far in and try and take out a big chunk at once. But if we do that, we're going to risk two things: one, injury, and two, snapping one of those ears off. So we're carving a V shape and we're just doing it from one side to the other. Just keep switching until you have the depth that you want. But again, I'll stress, don't take off too much here. Just do it little by little. Using minimal pressure here, I'm just whittling away the front of those ears just to smooth the wood down. We're utilising the exact same technique here that we did for carving those ears, so it's just a larger V shape. So we're whittling one angle and then the other. The only thing that you need to be mindful of is the very tip of your knife against the nose of the cat there. You can really risk scratching or taking off a chunk, so just be mindful about where the tip is. And again, just take away small pieces at a time. Resist the temptation to try and carve away a huge chunk at once. And now that we have that gap, we can get to the underside of the head and the face a bit more, just to smooth out that area. From there we can just use a little bit of sandpaper just to help smooth out those rough areas, those little areas that were particularly difficult to get to with the knife, and just generally sand over. So not too much, because as always I really like to retain that whittled look. I don't want it too smooth, but on yours you can do whatever you like. You can sand it perfectly smooth, you can just retain the whittled shape if you like. And there's the finished cat. So it's a really simple shape, and obviously if you're trying to progress more with your carving journey, you can carve a cat with a tail, you can refine the shape more. But now we're going to move on to the mouse. And like I said at the start of the video, I do recommend you having some protection for your thumb or your hands here, because it's such a tiny piece that we're really going to need that added protection because the blade is so close to our fingers. Starting with the front where the ears are, we're just flattening that piece down because we want those ears to be flat, and I'm just taking away the sharp angles on both sides there. And we're just rounding the back of the mouse there, we're just taking away those sharp angles again, making sure it's more of a circular shape. Mark out where you want the ears to be and the little gap of the ears, and then we can proceed to just do the exact same thing we did for the ears of the cat. Just using that V shape, we're taking away a small amount so that we've got a nice gap between those ears. The technique that we used to carve the paws, where we scored the lining, we're doing the exact same for the shape of those ears there, just on a smaller scale. So I'm just gently pressing the knife in so I've got a trench to carve into, and then just whittling on the other side so I can remove some of the wood. And from here, all we're really doing is we're taking away some of the wood of the ears so that the ears are nice and thin, we don't want too thick. And then I'm just pointing the very front of the mouse where the nose is going to be. I'm just shaping that into a point. And then proceeding to just shape those ears a little bit more so they come forward over the front of the mouse. And there's the finished cat and mouse, the mini mouse. I really think this makes a great project for beginners who are looking for a little bit more of a challenge, because you've got those awkward angles, plus the mouse is so small that that's definitely a challenge to carve on its own. This has been another really enjoyable project to work on, and I think this will make a really great gift for someone who's a cat lover. It's been a pleasure having you join me here at The Joy of Carving. Thank you so much for your support. Please like and subscribe, and as always, happy carvings.